What is going on, guys? My name is Aaron, and this is the Game Day Hour. Welcome back to another episode, and it's finally time for us to do our week by week NFL coverage. This is week one of the NFL season, which in these episodes, we're going to be taking a look at two things. One, my fantasy football matchup lineup I put up, my opponent's lineup, and the projections and what I think about the matchup. And then we're going to be looking at all the games that happen on Sunday. So from the morning games at 12, for me that's Central Time, to Sunday Night Football, all those games I'll be predicting the winner and the score. So I hope you guys are excited as I am, because I've been waiting for these episodes to come out, because this is something I'm going to look forward to doing week by week. But without further ado, let's get started. As a note, I think you're probably looking at it. I'm going back to the Blue Yeti because I already recorded this episode with the lav mic that I've been using for the past few weeks, maybe a few months. I think that the audio is much better on the Blue Yeti, so I'm going to be using that. I just have to keep in mind where I'm at because of the distance with this thing. So we're going to be using the Yeti, and I have a book stand right here to prop it up because I kind of need it up here. So it kind of looks janky, but for now, we're going to work with it. Let's start with fantasy football. I am playing the same person that I played in the championship last year, in which I won 219 to 114. He and I both got an A+ in our draft, but this is the lineups we have set. I am starting CJ Stroud with a 35-point projection, Jonathan Taylor with a 16-point projection, Isaiah Pacheco with an 11-point projection, Rashad White with 10 points, AJ Brown with 15 points, Rashid Shaheed with 10, Evan McPherson over Harrison Butker because of the competition. McPherson is projected 10, while I'm also starting Cincinnati over Baltimore because Baltimore is playing Kansas City, and Cincinnati is projected 26 points. My opponent, on the other hand, is starting Jared Goff, projected 32, Breece Hall, who's projected with 12, Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is 15, Cooper Kupp at 9, Jalen Waddle at 8, Garrett Wilson at 10, Kiami Fairbairn at 9, and the New Orleans Saints defense at 26 points, which gives a projection of 132 to 120, in which it favors me and I have a 60% chance to win. But I never know. This specific player that I'm playing is a lot tougher. He's great at drafting and great at setting lineups, and he just knows how to get talent. And it looks like he's moving more towards a wide receiver dominant team. Jared Goff's an interesting pick, but I think he'll do well this year. I think what it's going to come down to is these new stars, CJ Stroud and Jonathan Taylor on my team, whom I've never used them before. I've seen AJ Brown play, and he's played great. I just need these guys to show up, and I don't think they're having tough competition. Well, except for Pacheco, but that's about it. So I'm excited to see how those matchups go, and I hope I win week one. But now, the fun part. Let's get to the games on Sunday, and let's see who we think is going to win. The first game is going to be between the Arizona Cardinals and the Buffalo Bills. By the way, I'm taking on this cyberpunk theme with all the NFL logos, so let me know what you think about this design. Arizona made some progress in the draft. Kyler Murray now has Marvin Harrison Jr., who I think is going to be one of the best players this year among all the rookies that were drafted. And Buffalo, on the other hand, they lost a lot of pieces. Stephon Diggs went to Houston and Gabriel Davis went to Jacksonville. So that offense outside the backfield and, of course, Josh Allen is kind of depleted. Arizona still has a lot of issues, and I don't trust them fully. I'm going to take the Bills to win this one 26-17. I think overall, I trust Buffalo. I trust Josh Allen a lot more. Arizona's going to be competitive for a bit. I just don't know how competitive they're going to be throughout the entire game, but who knows? I think Buffalo's defense is also still really good, and Arizona's defense, on the other hand, is really, really bad. So give me the Bills to win. Next up, we have the New England Patriots and the Cincinnati Bengals. New England is starting Jacoby Brissett, and Drake May is the backup. This is a whole new era for the Patriots. It's the first time Bill Belichick is not coaching them in over 20 years, 25 years close. They have their new quarterback who's going to be the backup, potentially taking over midway through the year or maybe early on, who knows. And then their wide receiver core, not that impressive, maybe some standouts, but we don't know just yet. Juju Smith-Schuster was just let go and went back to Kansas City. Ramondre Stevenson and Hunter Henry are probably the best weapons for Brissett or May when they play. And that defense is still pretty good, but come on. This is the Cincinnati Bengals, and even though they lost Joe Mixon, you still got Joe Burrow, you still have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, you still have a great offense, and your defense is not too far behind. Cincinnati in fantasy is a top 10 defense, and I have them starting in this game because New England's offense is not that impressive. If you saw my fantasy episode with the AFC East, you already know how I feel about that Patriots offense. I think it's very lackluster. Cincinnati is going to win this game. I have them winning 24-10. I just think that overall, as good as New England's defense tends to be, the offense is so behind in production. And I don't think that the offense is going to do that great this year. Maybe there's a spark. Now there's this new coaching and you don't have the old coaching, which kind of hurt the offense last season, and actually for the last 2 seasons when Mac Jones was the quarterback. But overall, the Bengals are a better team. Let's just hope that Cincinnati doesn't get off to the normal start they get off to, which is losing games early on and having a losing record after week 5, which they need to stop doing. Like, get to it, start winning. Don't be so rusty. Like, come on. They have to do better, and I think that they'll start off the year 1-0. Next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings and the New York Giants. You already know how I feel about the Giants. Okay, New York is a type of team that I see having the first overall pick next year in the NFL draft. They lost Saquon Barkley because they gave all the money to Daniel Jones, and outside of Malik Neighbors, who are some compatible targets? Darren Waller just retired. Like, that offense looks so bad. The only upside to New York is their defense, especially up front with Thibodeau and all of them, but I don't see how this is going to be a good year for New York. Now, on the flip side, Minnesota has all the offensive pieces it needs. It got Aaron Jones as their running back. You still have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. Your problem, though, is the quarterback position. For a little bit, JJ McCarthy looked like the answer until he got injured, and now we're probably not going to see him until next season. So you got Sam Darnold, which is not going to move anybody, except for New York, because New York has nobody. They still have Daniel Jones. The Vikings are going to win this game 20-7. Their offense, even if Sam Darnold is the quarterback, has so many weapons to move around with, and at times Darnold can play pretty good. I mean, early on with Carolina, he looked impressive. I don't know. We may not get the same story in Minnesota, but he has so many weapons. He ought to use them correctly. Minnesota can still make the playoffs because of their offense. Their defense needs to catch up, though. I think there's some holes there. But overall, I have the Vikings beating the Giants because, come on, it's the Giants. They looked awful in the offseason. They didn't look that great last year either. They had one good playoff run, and everybody got super excited. Let's cool the Jets. The Giants are not a big threat to the Vikings at all. Give me Minnesota. Next up, we have the Tennessee Titans and the Chicago Bears. This is Caleb Williams, the first overall pick in the draft, his debut into the NFL, and he has one of the most unique offenses out there. I mean, they made a lot of moves. DJ Moore they got last year. They got Rome Odunze in the draft to go along with Keenan Allen, who they got as a trade acquisition from the Chargers. So it's going to be his first year in Chicago, and you also got DeAndre Swift, while still having Cole Kmet as your tight end. So he has a great offense. The question now really relies on him and that defense. As for Tennessee, they also made some improvements on offense. Even though you lost King Henry, you still have Tyjae Spears, who people are projecting to be this really, really talented running back. And you also just got Tony Pollard from the Cowboys to be the backup. And then when you look at the wide receiver core, along with DeAndre Hopkins, you got Calvin Ridley. And hopefully a full season with both of them could be great. And then Chico Okonkwo is a solid tight end. He's not a top tier, but he's solid. The offenses look great. It's really just going to come down to the quarterbacks and the defense. And while I think that Caleb Williams might be the better quarterback, I think Tennessee overall has a better defense than Chicago. I'm not impressed with the Bears defense at all. I'm going to take the Titans to win this one, a very close one, 17-16. Caleb Williams is going to do great in the year, but it's a rookie season. What do you expect? I don't expect too much, but I think this first game, you'll see some flashes of brilliance, but give me Tennessee. I think their offense overall is just slightly better. Next up, we got the Carolina Panthers versus the New Orleans Saints. Carolina has not that impressive of an offense. They got Jonathan Brooks in the draft, and with the new quarterback coach, maybe Bryce Young might be taking a step forward. But overall, their team still is missing in a lot of areas. You did get Deontay Johnson from the Steelers to mix with Adam Thielen. So there could be some talent on the offense. And the defense, it does have some bright spots, but it still has a ways to go. Overall, New Orleans, outside of Derek Carr being mostly mediocre, you still have Alvin Kamara, you still have Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, you even got Jawan Johnson and Taysom Hill, and then that defense is still pretty stacked. I think that overall, New Orleans outmatches Carolina in many ways, and while I have Bryce Young winning Most Improved Player of the Year, he's still going to have a tough year. Carolina's still going to have a tough year. Give me New Orleans to win 28-17. They just have more. They're more dominant overall than the Panthers. It's just a lot more of a lopsided battle overall. So give me the Saints to win. I think that Derek Carr can get New Orleans to the playoffs. He just has to not do anything stupid, and he has to play lights out every single week. And by lights out, I mean at least 2 touchdowns a game. 3 touchdowns should be what he's aiming for, but no more mediocrity play, especially if you want to win in a division with the Buccaneers, who have made the playoffs as the leading contenders for the NFC South 3 years in a row, and of course Atlanta's making moves. But New Orleans can still do it. Speaking of Atlanta, the next game is the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Atlanta Falcons. Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins make their debuts for their respective teams. I think that Pittsburgh is going to have another year where they have a winning record. For some reason, they're always getting a winning record under Mike Tomlin. It's been since 2003 since the last time they had a losing record, or a losing season overall. As far as the way they match up, Najee Harris and George Pickens are the bright spots. Pat Freiermuth is a solid tight end, but outside of that, their depth isn't that great. As for the Falcons, with Kirk Cousins, you got Bijan Robinson, who is like a top 5 running back, at least projected to be a top 5 running back. You also have Drake London, who is set to potentially have an explosive year. Now that the offense is no longer under a system where Pruitt is the number 1 wide receiver for some reason, he should be able to, do a lot better. Kyle Pitts should finally have that knockout season he's been looking for. They just have to use him right, because so far he's kind of been a busted tight end. Sounds kind of rude to say, but he has been a pretty busted tight end overall. When you look at the defenses, obviously Pittsburgh has a far better defense than Atlanta. Atlanta still has a ways to go, and I'm not going to trust their defense just yet until they show me overall that they can, 1, hold a lead, which is something they're not really good at. I think that Atlanta is going to be a lot more explosive on offense, and Russell Wilson still needs to shake off some of the dust. I'm going to have the Falcons winning this one 27-20. I just think that Kirk Cousins is going to command that offense a lot better than Russell Wilson will command the Steelers offense, because I eventually think that Justin Fields is going to take over. No disrespect to Russell Wilson. I want him to have a good year, but I just also think he's kind of on the way out. So give me the Falcons to win this one. Next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Miami Dolphins. Now, if you look at Jacksonville, they have a really, really good offense. Trevor Lawrence, of course, signed that big contract, making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. So Jacksonville has their franchise quarterback for a while now. You have him with Travis Etienne, Christian Kirk, Gabriel Davis, Brian Thomas Jr., who you just acquired in the draft, and Evan Ingram on offense. And the Jacksonville Jaguars defense overall is pretty solid, especially up front, but I don't know how great they're going to be throughout the year. As for Miami, though, when you look at that offense, it's arguably one of the best offenses in the league. Tua is a solid quarterback, and he still needs to work some things out. But when you have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, eventually Odell Beckham Jr., along with Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane in the backfield, you have a pretty solid offense. And then Miami's defense, it's still one of the better defenses. Jalen Ramsey obviously is commanding that secondary. Miami overall matches very well with Jacksonville, but it's because of that offense that I'm giving Miami a 34-21 point edge. I mean, Tyreek Hill ought to have a 2,000-yard receiving season. He ought to do it because he's one of the best deep threat wide receivers. He's one of the fastest players in the league, and he's tough to stop. Defenses have to literally prepare game plans around him, and I just don't think that there's going to be many game plans to stop him. Give me the Dolphins, especially in Miami, to win 34-21. Outside of Sunday Night Football, this is probably going to be the best game of Week 1, at least on Sunday. It's the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. CJ Stroud versus Anthony Richardson. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a more compelling quarterback matchup than this one, because if Anthony Richardson does not get injured, these two are contending at the highest level for the AFC South last season, even for Rookie of the Year. I have Stroud winning MVP while I have Anthony Richardson winning Comeback Player of the Year. But outside of that, when you look at the offenses, Houston's offense slaps. And by slaps, I mean they do a lot better overall. I mean, you got Joe Mixon, you just acquired Stephon Diggs as well, to mix with Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Dalton Schultz. That offense is far better than the one that the Colts are cooking, because outside of Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman, you don't really have a deep offensive weaponry for Anthony Richardson. Defensive-wise, I'd probably give Indianapolis the edge just slightly, but Houston is trending in that direction. I think Houston has a better team overall, and CJ Stroud is the better quarterback. Give me the Texans to win 21-17. It's going to be a fun year, though, and I hope Anthony Richardson stays healthy, because I think he has a case to be made to be a top 10 quarterback in this league. But we're just going to have to wait and see. And overall, that rushing game for Indianapolis, this is a fantasy game for me to watch, because Stroud, Tank Dell, and Jonathan Taylor, who are on my team, are all in this game. So I really want to see how each player does. But yeah, give me the Texans to win. Next up, we have the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Los Angeles Chargers. It's going to be an interesting battle, because if you look at the offenses, the Raiders clearly have the better wide receiver core or receiving core overall, with Devontae Adams and even Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer at the tight end position. But when you look at the Chargers, their wide receiver core looks terrible, but you still have Justin Herbert, and you also have Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, who I think are better than Zamir White. Their offenses are kind of backwards, but even, which is odd to say. Defensively, they both stack up pretty well. Max Crosby on one end, Joey Bosa on the other. I think that it's going to really come down to the quarterback that makes the better plays. And I'm going to still give Justin Herbert, despite having a lackluster wide receiver core, because there is possibility for some players to stand out, especially Ladd McConkey, whose name has been thrown out a lot this offseason. So give me the Chargers to win 17-13. It's still going to be a low-scoring battle, because you have great defenses and not so amazing offenses. But I think the Chargers just edge it out just a bit to go 1-0 to start the year off. Next up, we have the Denver Broncos versus the Seattle Seahawks. It's interesting to match these two up, because Seattle's offense is clearly better. Geno Smith, Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith-Jigba, Noah Fant. That offense is far better than Denver, which has Cortland Sutton as your number one wide receiver, who wasn't your number one for a while until Jerry Jeudy moved on to Cleveland. Your running back is Javonte Williams, who I don't think is better than Kenneth Walker. And the quarterback, of course, is Bo Nix. Now, I have no idea how good Bo Nix will be. I have high hope for him, because I think he's going to be a great quarterback going down the line, but first year in the NFL, he's going to struggle a bit. And then the defenses, I mean, I'd probably give the edge to Denver defensively, but not by a lot. It's a very, very small margin. When you look at the teams overall, I'm going to take Seattle to win 24-14. I think their offense is going to be rolling. I think Metcalf's going to have a great game. I don't really know what to think about Denver. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams this year, but I have high hopes for Bo Nix. It's like Carolina. I have high hopes for Bryce Young, even though I think they're going to do terrible this year. We'll see how Denver does, but give me the Seahawks. Next up, we have the Washington Commanders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jaden Daniels makes his debut against the same team that made it as far as the NFC divisional round, which was the Buccaneers, who ended up losing to the Detroit Lions. The Buccaneers overall have a really good team. I mean, Baker Mayfield, I think, is solid for Tampa Bay's system. Rashad White and Mike Evans are on my fantasy team, and I think they're going to have great years. Obviously, I think Mike Evans is on the rise to have another 1,000 receiving yard season. Hopefully more touchdowns with it. And then, obviously, you still have Godwin Naughton on that offense. And the defense is still solid, but for Washington, their defense is atrocious, and it needs some work. You did get Dan Quinn, who did lead the Cowboys defense very, very well, so there has to be improvement there. And then offensively, Jaden Daniels has Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson Jr. in the backfield, and of course Terry McLaurin is still your wide receiver. You missed out on the chance to get Brandon Ayuk though, so the wide receiver core is pretty bad for Washington, but this is going to be my upset game of the week, because I have Washington winning 23-20. I think Jaden Daniels is going to have an impressive opening game for his career. I think he's going to do very, very well against Tampa Bay, but it's going to be very, very close. I will give Washington the edge in this one, but they need to work on that wide receiver core. They need to put more talent around Jaden Daniels. Maybe you can work on getting trades or picking up some free agents, but something needs to give because Terry McLaurin cannot be your only wide receiver. You get away with it in the first game, but we'll see. Next up, we have the Dallas Cowboys and the Cleveland Browns. Two teams that are absolutely similar in almost every way. The defenses overall are very similar. They have the same kind of firepower. I mean, Cleveland has Myles Garrett, Dallas has Micah Parsons, and the Cowboys are also getting back Trevon Diggs, while the opposite side has Denzel Ward as your cornerback. And then offensively, the running back core would be more lopsided if Nick Chubb was playing, but since he's still out with injury, you have Jerome Ford versus, on the opposite side, Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cooks and Rico Dowdle, who not that impressive overall, even though there's some nice names that will probably do well this year. Wide receiver core, Cleveland has Amari Cooper, who is a standout wide receiver, who is also on my fantasy team, and Jerry Jeudy, who needs to prove himself a little bit more, but could be a great secondary receiver. While Dallas has CeeDee Lamb, who was one of the best receivers last year, finally got that contract signed, and Brandon Cooks, who should still be pretty solid, but kind of on the same level as Jerry Jeudy. The difference is the quarterback play. While Deshaun Watson had a pretty good winning record when he was playing, he was not playing that great, and he didn't play a lot of games, so he's coming back from injury. Dak Prescott had an MVP-type season, finishing second in the votings. The biggest lopsided part is the quarterback play. Dak Prescott is better than Deshaun Watson. And because of that, I'm giving the Cowboys an edge to win 31-24. I just think that quarterback play is where it's going to be the most important, because otherwise these teams are dead level similar. So give me the Cowboys to win this one. And then lastly, Sunday Night Football between the Los Angeles Rams and the Detroit Lions. Matthew Stafford, his second time coming back to Detroit, this time in the regular season, so it's going to be directly in prime time like it was in the playoffs last year, and he's 0-1 against the Lions in Detroit. Detroit last year made it to the NFC Championship where they had a shot to make the Super Bowl, but then San Francisco came back and won. But still, NFC Championship, they're still a team that is contending for the Super Bowl again this year. And the Rams, on the other hand, they have a very flashy offense. Stafford, Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee are a great offensive pair. But their defense, on the other hand, now that Aaron Donald's gone, looks really, really terrible. You have to look at Detroit's offense as one of the big juggernauts. You have Jared Goff, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta. That offense is arguably top 10 in the league. And then their defense is not too far behind. They made some good moves in the draft. You still got Aiden Hutchinson up front. Their defense is the sole reason why this is a lopsided battle. Give me Detroit in a 24-21. It'll still be close because LA's offense is pretty good, but the defense can only do so much against that Detroit offense. I think the Lions will win and start the year off 1-0. Stafford remains winless back in Detroit against Detroit. And that'll do it for today's episode. I wonder what you guys think about these matchups, and let me know how your guys' fantasy teams and matchups are going to be this week. Comment down below, and I'll be able to read them and even reply back. And then, of course, go follow me on social media if you haven't already. The links are in the description, and subscribe if you haven't already as well. This setup that you see might actually change in a bit. I don't know how long it will take before that change is implemented, but I'll let you guys know, or you'll see it in an episode when that does happen. But keep in mind, there's going to potentially be a setup change, which I'm pretty excited for. And now that I'm back with the Blue Yeti, hopefully the audio sounds a lot better. I was hearing multiple different audio wavelengths, but the more I keep hearing it on YouTube, I did not like what I was listening to overall. So I just moved on from the lavalier mic and moved back to the Blue Yeti. And hopefully with these audio configurations, I can make it work and make it sound better. So let me know what you guys think about the audio overall. I'll be listening and trying to work with this microphone. All that information and more will end off today's episode. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great day. Take care, and I'll see you all next week. Have a good one.